Happy Sabbath, everyone. Uh, so I'm going to set up my board, one that I'm going to be using today. I'm sorry. Okay, shall we bow our heads in prayer? Let us pray. Dear Lord, we come before your throne this Sabbath morning. We thank you, O Lord, for the light that you continue to bring to us. The light that is shining upon this movement is so great, and it is so evident that indeed we are in the time of the latter rain. We thank you for the life, and we thank you for being active participants of this particular dispensation in the history of this planet. As we are going to delve into the discussion for today, we pray that your spirit, which is evidently upon this movement, guide us through the subject that we are going to discuss. This is our humble prayer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so the past camps that have been happening in this movement have been quite different from me and very powerful. And particularly the last camp, the international camp meeting, has been one of the most powerful and unique camps, I can say, for me, I have witnessed since joining this movement in 2016. Um, so emanating from the studies that happened in that camp, I also went back to my Bible with my with my strong Seventh-day Adventist background, began to look into some of the chapters and some of the verses that we used to read differently back then, and what we used to teach back then, and how God has just revealed more and deeper knowledge into subjects that we used to think that we were very conversant with. We're so confident that we understood. To me, that came as the international camp meeting itself, for me, came as a huge reminder that indeed God is leading this movement, however frail it may look and however powerless it may look. God intends to wrought a very powerful work through this movement. So today, for the sake of today's discussion, I am hoping that I am going to go through what I have to share. Then I'm going to open up to everyone for discussion. So allow me to share what I have uh, while you perhaps take your questions and comments down. After I'm done, then I'll open for discussion, and we are we are able to discuss. So generally, as an individual, I've been coming across questions from some folks within the movement with regards to what the Sunday law is and what the Sunday law is about. And that has been a very difficult question to respond to, because as a movement, we did not really have one position with regard to that issue, and sharing your thoughts would only be sharing one of the positions that the teachers, the Sunday law teachers, were teaching, one that you were inclined to, to believe, you see. So it was so difficult to discuss the subject with anyone, and I think I'm so happy that we are able to now start zeroing down and into the issue freely, since now the movement has come to what we call a concord and understanding with regards to that particular subject. So the heating subject of the moment as we speak is the Sunday law issue. And uh, we have come to the conclusion that the Sunday law is equal to the 2024 election cycle. So in essence, we are saying that this waymark is 2024. Okay, so this is where we are, and this is what we have come to agree, in that the Sunday law speakers, we had brought the subject upon us, the Sunday law subject upon us, publicly reached a concord, a conclusion, an agreement in the past camp on the issue, and that's the conclusion that we have generally come to. Okay, so I'm going to write down a line of the implications of that conclusion, in case some of us, we have not yet really zeroed down or boiled down to the implication of that particular conclusion. Okay, so we have 1798 using the general common Seventh-day Adventist model. Okay, so I'm going to write here common SDA model, because this is the model that we understand, or we can call it the GC model, the Great Controversy model, without going deep into the lines and the like, the way we do it as a movement. So using that particular model, I'm going to populate this particular line of the Great Controversy. So we have 1798 is precisely stated in the Great Controversy book. The other waymark that we have, which is precisely stated and which is common amongst Seventh-day Adventists, I want to put it as 1844, the great disappointment, right? And then from there, if you're going to ask the Seventh-day Adventism in me, we will agree that the next waymark would be what is known to be the Sunday law. Then from there, we go to close of probation. From there, we go to the second Advent. And we, being Seventh-day Adventists, this is the waymark that we are looking for, the glorious appearing of Jesus, right? our very name in itself, Seventh-day Adventist, is coined from that expectation that we are looking forward to the advent, the second advent of Jesus Christ. So the implication of the past camp meeting is that this particular waymark, we have put a date, a year, just like we have years, we have 1798, we have 1844, now officially we have 2024 being the National Sunday Law, NSL, the National Sunday Law. And again, the other implication that we have is that as we are speaking right now, as I'm seated here presenting on Zoom, time is ticking. We are in 2025 November, right? And we are going towards the waymark that most people fear, which is the close of probation, which is this waymark. This is what you and I, members of this movement, are boldly uh, claiming. So this is the implication of the discussions that we've been having as a movement for the past few months, and that climaxed at the most recent K meeting. So that's the implication. We believe that this waymark that we have known to as the Sunday law, we've passed it, and as we are speaking right now, we are going towards the close of probation. Okay. So one thing that I want to also uh, bring to your attention, which you already know, if we've been following the presentations that have been going on, or from general knowledge, we all know that Ellen G. White and the pioneers, rather, or Ellen G. White in general, is the one who coined the term the Sunday law, which we then absorbed to be a waymark in our movement. So I'm going to say here origins of the term Sunday law. So in general, right? In general, the origin of this term in itself is we get it from EGW. Okay? So we get it from Ellen G. White. The term Sunday law. And this term we do not find the term in the Bible. We do not find the term Sunday law in the Bible. And in any case, the Bible uses a terminology that is far from a day and far from a law in itself. So in this study, I'm going to go to my favorite passage with regards to this particular issue or this particular subject, which is Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. If anybody could just post it on the chat. Revelation 13, verse 11. I'll ask anybody to read. Anybody?
And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon.
Okay, thank you so much, Debbie. So 18 verse 11 speaks about a nation kingdom that is described as rising also from the earth. And this nation or this kingdom that is rising, it is described as having two horns like a lamb, and that is very significant. And it is also described as speaking as a dragon. The KJV said he spake as a dragon, and that is significant too. So I want to suggest that when you consider this particular beast, the first characteristic is that it had two horns, and the writer likens it to a lamb, like a lamb. Then the second characteristic, according to the KJV, spec as two hands like a lamb, and spec as a dragon. We get that from Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. So we get this part from verse 11. And I want to suggest to you that if you're gonna read after this presentation, or maybe some of you, most of us are familiar with the contents of verse 12 to 18 of the same chapter, I want to suggest that that is a repeat and enlarge of, of verse 11. But verse 11 in general, particularly the part after the comma in verse 11, the part that says, and spake as a dragon. So verse 11, the speaking as a dragon part is the one that John labors to explain, speaking as a dragon. The events that happen that lead to this person, or what John is actually describing is, well, this beast had two horns like a lamb, but spake as a dragon. So how do you identify the speaking as a dragon of this particular kingdom or this nation? And it is in this repeat and enlarge, in this repeat and enlarge, this is where we then come across uh, the term image of the beast. And then later we coin this terminology, image of the beast. It is there, we don't coin it. An image is actually created to the beast, the first beast of Revelation chapter 13. So we have this terminology, image of the beast, and then later we have the mark of the beast, right? And then Ellen White, EGW, will tell you that this is a Sunday law, right? And hence, this particular um, line that I've just put on top of, of our notes. So this particular waymark, the Sunday law that we have put a date on recently, uh, in the Bible, this terminology is not there. It is the image, then later mark of the beast. That is what we find in the Bible. So the first part is we need to uh, be intelligent or agree that the terminology in itself, Sunday law, is not in the Bible, but it is derived from a particular history, is meaning is describing what the Bible means when it says image of the beast. So going back to this kingdom that is rising up, we know that this kingdom has two horns like a lamb, and we have understood that those two horns, they represent two principles: republicanism, and the second one being Protestantism. Right? These are the principles that answer to the two horns. So obviously this is revision to most of us. Two horns like a lamb, republicanism and Protestantism. So now, at one level, the USA at its inception, we understand this particular beast, by the way, if I haven't mentioned it earlier on, we understand this particular lamb-like beast to be the United States of America, which we already agree on. Now, I want to show one or two things. At one level, when the United States of America is founded, at its inception as a nation, it is 100% perfect, and I'll explain why. Because I'm going to say also it is faulty. It is 100% perfect. And by perfect, I mean different from its predecessors on the world stage. Predecessors on the world stage. We know that. How do we know that? We know that because we have history. History will tell us how the United States came to be uh, from the time that they colonized the United States of America, thinking that it was just a small island up until it grew. But in 1776, that is when the nation is officially founded. That is when they come up with what we know to be the Declaration of Independence, right? So that is where we begin to mark, that is where we mark the United States of America beginning. So it begins through a democracy, it begins through the will of the people. It is not a one-person show, but it is many people that gather, they discuss, right? And after discussing, they come up with a document that they call, this is the Constitution. This is what will help us to govern. And those people are very intentional in wanting to be totally different from the predecessor kingdoms that have been there on the world stage. And hence I say it was 100% perfect with regards to to that particular issue. So it is different from what we have seen before from a panoramic view perspective of prophecy. It is totally different because it is coming up through a concord. It is coming up through an agreement. The players there are actually sitting down to say, how are we going to govern this nation? And actually, when you read um, the Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Independence. It's a very powerful document. I'm sure we have come across this terminology at least. The Declaration of Independence of 4 July 1776. Okay, I'm going to paraphrase it, or I'm going to read portions of it. It says, all men are created equal, right? And that they are endowed with by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these inalienable rights are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And that to secure these, governments are instituted among men. This is so, so, so powerful and so, so different. Because remember, in the past, all kingdoms that rose, they they did not govern with that particular way of or modus operandi, way of operating. They considered the ones that have conquered or the ones that have taken over considered themselves to be superior to others, and everybody else pays tribute to show that they are obeying the government, or rather the kingdom that is in authority. And if you remember in the Bible, Paul actually encourages the Jews to say, no, you should give you should uh, pay taxes to the governments that are there, you see now. So, and Jesus again, the Jews go to Jesus, and Jesus says, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. In other words, in the past, the governments that were there or the kingdoms that were ruling were oppressive to the citizens of the time. But in this particular case, we find a government or a kingdom, a nation that is rising, and it is being intentional in going against or opposite the principles of the governments that have been ruling, or the kingdoms that have been ruling before, right? And they actually go to the extent of saying, okay, we are going to write this down so that we eternalize it, we make it permanent. That what we believe is that every human being has a right to life and to liberty and to happiness, right? And that to secure these rights, that is the duty of any government. So any government that rises, including the government that we are coming up with today on the 4th of July, 1776, our prerogative, our main objective, our task is going to be to protect the citizens. We are going to give a right to everyone to have life, to have liberty, and to pursue happiness. That is what we are going to do as a government starting today. And we are hopeful that all governments across the world, their prerogative, their main objective would be to facilitate that each and every individual under them will get rights, right? And what is the purpose of tax? If the citizens are going to be paying tax, obviously they would pay tax to the government. They will pay to the government, not to a person, to the government, in order for the government to have resources. And what are the resources for? The resources are meant to implement the goal of the objective of the government, which is to protect the citizens. So this is what this particular government or this particular nation is saying when it is rising. And prophecy will not give you other minute, small, tiny details about this particular government, but prophecy will give you a bigger picture. And John will say, this kingdom had two horns like a lamb, right? And when John is saying the kingdom had two horns like a lamb, John is pointing already at what we have identified, or what is identified in prophecy, being republicanism, the right to govern, the right to choose our own leaders, right? And Protestantism, the right to
Ignatius,
worship. So,
Ignatius.
yes.
Okay. Can we ask questions?
You want to ask now?
Do you want to wait? Do you want to wait? Yeah. You want?
Okay. Wait. I have said that when I started, I asked people to allow me to just run through and finish.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Then we can ask questions and discuss. And I'm hoping that in the next 10 minutes, I should be done. Okay. All right. So another element that we find in Revelation chapter 13, right, from our pre-understanding of prophecy, is that this nation says no king. People must self-govern, right? And but, okay, so I'm going to put a but, because in the verse, there is a comma there, and it says, this kingdom also spake as a dragon. That's Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. It spake as a dragon. And I want to suggest that the speaking as a dragon, you can see it two ways if you want. When this kingdom is instituted, when this nation begins, I see it, historians see it, and I hope you see it too. That in 1793, it is so in 1793, we know about the Fugitive Slave Act, is it? Of 1793, okay? And we also know that when this kingdom says all men are created equal, all men, it is referring to these men should be white and these men should be actually males. We know that. Okay. But I want to suggest that prophecy requires us to see the horns first. So I've just taken out these two as being the weaknesses of this nation as it is rising. But prophecy requires us to see the horns because the horns are significant. Remember, when I started, I mentioned that when prophecy says, this beast had two horns like a lamb, that is significant. Spec as a dog, that is significant too. So we are supposed to recognize the two horns as a lamb, and we are supposed to recognize that this nation, as it is also coming up, it is coming up through the will of a collective body of people. It is not just one family, one powerful family with an army that defeats the other family. It becomes great. It says, okay, my name is Nebuchadnezzar. I'm the one who's going to rule this world. After me, my son will come after me. And after that son, their son, etc., etc. It is a collective body of people. And that is what we have come to understand as democracy. The prophet is telling us that even though that democracy is there, there is still some, this nation is growing. It cannot be good just like that. It is growing. It has begun at a very good point. It has begun at a perfect position to say, look, we are all equal. Every human being is equal, and we are going to govern this nation in this particular manner, you see. But then prophecy reminds us that later you are going to see this dragon element coming up, right? Which, as I have mentioned earlier on, I've already suggested that the dragon element is what we then see here uh, from 12 to 18, which is the repeat and enlarge, right? Okay, so I'm going to put a small summary of what I've been laboring to say so far. I'm going to put it down here. Okay, so I'm going to say this is United States of America. Okay, so, and I'm going to say there is the good United States of America. Then there is the bad United States of America. So I'm going to call the first part, I'll call it USA 1. And I'm going to call this one USA 2, right? So 1998. Okay. So, and I'm going to call this the lamp. Please, those that have questions, write them down. Don't forget them. Or I don't have the answers to all the questions that you have. And those that have contributions also, please don't forget. So this is the good United States, and this is the bad United States. And John puts it this way: it has two horns like a lamb, spake as a dragon. Okay, so from the chapter itself, I want to suggest that you can see that there are two phases of this United States of America. And this dragon part is the 12 to 18, right? And the lamp part is the verse 11, part A. Two horns like a lamb. The part B, it explains some elements that are still there within the United States of America, though it is good, but it is still growing from the past, because the people that are governing, they are coming from the past histories and they are growing from there. So there is a part B that is there, which is then repeated and enlarged, explained from 12 to 18. 12 and 18 is the bad part of the United States of America, which is actually a new United States of America, different from the first United States of America. Okay, so how does the United States of America become bad? There is a point in history that the United States of America begins to show signs of becoming bad or going back to a bad state, to a bad state. And how do we define bad? The chapter defines bad as going back to So in this chapter, this United States of America, at some point in history, it regresses to old systems. It goes through a relapse, a regression, okay, regression to old systems of governance. And governance, I mean world governance, that it has seen in the world. It goes back. So that point, when it begins to go back, is what prophecy identifies to be making an image of the beast, which is the first beast, right? And then giving life to the image. So this point in history, this particular point, let me try to point it. This particular point here is what we have come to know as the Sunday law, okay? Before I talk about this particular point, I want to just suggest that what is the cause of this regression. I want just to suggest that perhaps it could be, if you imagine the United States of America as a person, maybe what can cause this person to go back is fear. Fear or uncertainty. Or confusion. And these are just my confusion or desire for comfort. Well, I am saying, with regard to this point, I'm saying, say it's a person who has been doing a good thing. Sometimes what causes them to decide to go back to the bad ways is because they are afraid that this good way of doing things, where is it going to lead us? We don't know. So they are afraid, they are confused. There's so much uncertainty in the future with regards to continuing being good. And I say, no, let's just go back to the way things were done, because that way was tried and tested, you see now. So at some point in history, they go back to the old way of doing things. Okay, so I'm going to draw my last line, which will explain the last, which will be the final part. So this image of the beast, which we have identified on top, this image of the beast here, this one, is what I'm going to explain here. The image of the beast cannot come as a result of just, one person doing it. It cannot come through the means of one person. At least we need some sort of democracy, some sort of voting. How do we know that? We know that because when this kingdom is beginning, when it begins, it sets up something that is really solid, a constitution, very solid, to say, this is how we are going to govern. And everyone who governs is controlled by that particular document. So in order for the kingdom to go back, there has to be some sort of democracy that goes on in order for the kingdom to go back to the old ways of how the world was governed in the past, or rather default settings of how the world has always been governed. There has to be some sort of a democracy. There has to be some sort of a voting that happens in order for that particular event to happen. And the question is that true? Have we seen it in the past? And my answer is yes, we have. So if we mark 1850 to be a Sunday law or a mark of the beast or an image of the beast, was there voting in 1850? They should have been voting or some sort of democracy. It was not a one-man band. It should have gone through processes and also approved. Or it should have gone through the document, a document called the Constitution. It should be constitutional, 1850, in order to pass. And 1888, there should have been a voting too. In 2024, cannot happen without voting or an agreement amongst people. So this is the FSL, Fugitive Slave Law. This is the National Sunday Law. We know that there was involvement of Congress in both these two histories, and at least some voting, some people gathering to say, this is what we are going to do. It's not one person who's going to do it. And we know that this one was going to destroy, it destroy equality or the spirit of the DI. The DI, let me remind you that the DI is the Declaration of Independence, is it? And the National Sunday Law is going to do the same, destroy the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, right? And here, what is the voting about? Is people are voting for a system that destroys the spirit of the GI. We know that this is a history of failure, and this is a history of failure, and this one is the history of success. So, as a conclusion, I'm going to say that before we talk about Sunday or Sunday law, the first thing that has to happen is there has to be a vote first that happens in order for what we expect to happen, in order for this particular system or this particular government or the lamb-like characteristic to collapse, there has to be some voting that happen, or at least that process should be constitutional. It should abide by the constitution that was put by the founders of the nation. That is why in 1888, the reason why that history failed is the vote failed to go through. It did not go through in Congress. So we've been looking at this particular history from the perspective of Revelation chapter 17, the rise and fall of nations. So I want to suggest to us, as has been presented before, that this vote ushers in the rise of the seventh kingdom of Bible prophecy. So we need a vote. A vote ushers in the seventh kingdom. Of Bible prophecy. So I have not gone to Revelation chapter 17. Intentionally, I've decided to stay in Revelation chapter 13 in my presentation, because this is the end of the presentation. So in my presentation, I've decided to stay in Revelation chapter 13. And in summary, okay, so in summary, we have seen that we have gone through revision of the Sunday law issue, and we have shown that the term Sunday law originates from our pioneers, and I've generalized to say it is Ellen G. White who says Sunday law, okay? But in the Bible, that terminology was used by Ellen White to explain what is known as the image of the beast, which turns out to be the mark of the beast at later stage, right? Then, so let's do away with Sunday law for now. It's mark of the beast. Then we went back to talk about the rise of America. We saw the two horns, and we are saying, though history will show us that America was not 100% perfect, prophets will say that it is 100% perfect. And I am saying it was 100% perfect, and that I have defined 100% perfect as being different from its predecessors on the world stage, right? And how did we qualify that? I went to 4 July 1776 and showed that this was a bold step that any nation had never done in the past, to say that the object of any government on earth is to protect its citizens and to make sure that everyone has the right to life and has the right to happiness and has the right to pursue that happiness. And when the government collects tax from the people, it is collecting that tax in order to facilitate that people have life. Okay, then whereas in the past that tax was used by government to enrich themselves, or the leaders to enrich themselves. Okay, then we looked at the good United States of America, bad United States of America, and marked the image of the beast as the point at which the United States of America begins to be bad. And how does it go bad? Bad is defined as going back to the old system. So we went to history, and we saw that in order for United States to become bad, it has to happen through voting. And if we go to the history of 1858 and 1888, there has to have been some voting happening in order for the nation to become bad, or to go back to the old way, old system of world governance, right? So in 2024, when we were looking for a Sunday law, it should have been to do with voting. First, before we start to zero down into the intricacies of what people are voting for and how it relates to them being bad, and how we define that as being bad, or how it militates against the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, before we go into that, we should see a voting process happening first. So I labored to show that Revelation chapter 17 will then show us a series of kingdoms of Bible prophecy. We also see them in Revelation chapter 13, but in 17 they are explained. We have the prophet now saying 5 are fallen, one is, the other one is going to come, and speaks about the 8th, referring to the 7, etc., etc. So before that seventh kingdom of Bible prophecy comes, it is ushered in through a vote. And hence, that vote should define to us what we are looking for when we are pursuing or trying to find out what the waymark called the image of the beast in Revelation chapter 13 is all about. So I am done. If there are any questions, contributions, we can
I've
it's
got
now open.
Ignatious.
Hi, Natalie.
In 1888, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, there was no vote on the ballot, and there was nothing on the ballot about voting. It was all about tariffs. It's not
In
about
which
Sunday law. It was about tariffs in 88.
in 1888.
The election was about tariffs, I think.
Okay. So you're saying in 1888 there was no voting.
There was, of course, there's voting. It was an election, but it wasn't about Sunday law. It was about tariffs. That's how they won.
Okay. So there was no election in 1888.
There was an election, of course,
Uh-huh.
but it wasn't
Uh-huh.
about Sunday law. Sunday law was not on the ballot. The issue,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's
it was
true.
about
That's true.
tariffs. Sunday
Yes.
law was a bill that went in and was discussed, and obviously it was Jones who brought it up, fighted the most about it. But there was nothing on the ballot about Sunday laws. It was tariff.
Yes. I agree. I agree. Okay. So okay, I agree with you. The point that I'm putting across is that it has to be a collective body, collective people who are discussing the issue to say we are going to do this.
You can't put vote though because it was not an election. Because when we talk about votes in
Yes.
2024, we're talking about election.
Yes, it is not an election at all, but people have to say, okay, we have option A and option B, let's vote. We have two things, this or that. Let's vote to agree to say we are going this way or we are going to go that way. So it's not one person who's going to say, okay, I'm going to, from now going forward, this is how things are going to happen.
Hi, Ignatious.
Hello.
Um, if I understand you correctly, is the point you're trying to make that this seventh kingdom's rise to power is not one definitive action, the way Ellen White would phrase it, as a law being made. Instead,
Okay.
no, not okay. I'm asking if this is what you're saying. That the way in which the kingdom comes about is through the electoral process. That's the point you're making, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's the point I'm making. Or at least I'm saying in the past histories, if you look at it, if we look into the past histories, 1850 and 1888, there, there, there has to be some voting that happens in order for this to come to pass. In order for the change, the significant change in this nation comes to pass. So in essence, this presentation, I think it is in my understanding, it is these are my loud thoughts in trying to understand really explaining why we say 2024 is the Sunday law using argument number 1. Remember, the first argument why this movement says that 2024 is a Sunday law is the rise and fall of nations. That's argument number 1, is it? So we argue that prophecy is all about the rise and fall of nations. And I am saying further to that, with that in mind, if you go to Revelation chapter 13, what we call the Sunday law through Ellen White is actually the fall of the United States of America. Because it is a process of destroying the spirit of the Declaration of Independence. And that is why I went to 4 July 1776 to say, this is the pillar of what we call the United States of America. And in order for this pillar to be destroyed, which are the 2 horns, because the pillar was installed through a collective body of people, it will be destroyed again through a collective body of people. So how it will be destroyed, it might, according to Ellen White, it was going to be destroyed through what she calls the Sunday law. We know there's more to that history, but from a general perspective, simplistic view of that particular history, she says through the Sunday law, it was going to be destroyed, okay? And I am saying that in order for that law to even come to pass, there has to be some collective body of people agreeing on it, coming up with a vote. And in our history, we are seeing an American election. We are seeing an election. And we are pointing at that election, and we are saying this election qualifies, it has the characteristics that are found in the primary chapter, which is the Revelation chapter 13, because any Seventh-day Adventist, you talk to them about the National Sunday Law or the Mark of the Beast, they want you to take them to Revelation chapter 13. So I went to Revelation chapter 13 with the knowledge of what we have already discussed on Revelation chapter 17, because 13 comes before 17, is it? Then I am seeing that because this nation is founded on the principles of democracy, it's going to fall assuming the same principles, democracy. A vote, then that brings that nation down. Any comments before
Yes,
I hand
please.
over? Okay.
What's so different about election 2024 to any other election that has taken place thus far? Why would 2024 be recognized as Sunday law and not an election before that?
Okay. I know somebody can answer that, but for time, let me try to give my answer. Why do we say 2024? We say 2024 because we come up with a model that helps us to understand how the Sunday law must happen. So if we are going to say we are trying to understand the Sunday law, if we are going to say this is the Sunday law, And we know that the Sunday law is when this nation becomes bad or becomes like Babylon. That's what we know, right? In order for us to understand this, how this will happen, we need a hinge. We need something that will help us. We already have methodology that God declares the end from the beginning, is it? So we already know as a movement that God declares the end from the beginning. So you want to understand how this nation will become Babylon, you go to the first Babylon. But then the structure that we are given in Revelation chapter 13 and Revelation chapter 17, there is a midway mark. That you see. I hope you are still following. Okay, when John says he's standing on the sand of the sea and he sees a dragon, he sees a beast that is coming up from the sea. He sees backward, which is the sea, and then he sees what's happening forward, which is the land.
The land.
Yes, you are following, right? Okay. So he sees what's happening, land, sea, okay. And we mark where John's standing to be 1798, which is the sand of the sea. Okay. So by John looking at the sea and seeing this beast coming, we also know that Revelation and Daniel are same book. So there are other beasts that are there that came before this particular beast. So God is giving John a middle point in order to understand what will happen there. So in order for us to understand this election, 2024, we certainly need to understand 1798, how the nation came up to be. Because we are given it in the Bible. The Bible gives us 1798. It gives us how the nation begins, you see now. So if this nation began as a democracy, there is a point in history that we are going to see that democracy going down. Democracy, rule of law, upholding equality. Let me talk about equality because one can argue that there was democracy in 2024. Upholding equality. So there should be a point in time in history where we see somebody, an entity, try to say, this which we came up with in 1798 is not fit for purpose at some point in time. This is not fit for purpose anymore. We need to go back to that. You see now. So using this same model, we have also come to understand, to see that we already did it in the past and we called it agitation. Before Sunday law. Before Sunday law. And in history, if you remember, on January 6 of 2021, we have 1798 here. What do we know about 1798? 1798, we know democracy, peaceful, handover of power. That's what we know when the nation is founded. This is the precepts that build our nation. This is what we are going to do. But then for the first time in the history of this nation, January 6, 2021 happens. Somebody comes and they try to undo this. So, as students of prophecy, reading Revelation chapter 13, begin to say, oh, what this nation stood for in 1798 is exactly what is being attacked here, but it didn't happen in 2021. Why can't it happen in 2021? Because there is this document called the Constitution of America, the DI, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution. So, in order for this, for what happened in 1798 to be destroyed, whoever that entity, in order for that entity to destroy it, it needs to go through this process. So it has to take this process, go with it to some point in history, right? Use this particular process to destroy that. So because we have 2021 as we qualify it to be agitation because we are saying it is an attempt to destroy 1798, and it has not happened before in the history of this nation. Okay, so we begin now to walk through the history, and we look for a point in history where this entity that tried to destroy this principle is going to try again, and that entity does it in 2024. It tries, but this time it goes through democratic processes, right? It reviews, it revises, it understands that in order for us to destroy this, we have to do it using the method through which the nation was founded. And we only find that happening in 2024.
Ignatius, is the Constitution overthrown now then?
Sorry?
Is the Constitution overthrown in 2024? Oh, the Declaration of Independence. Is it overthrown in 2024?
In 2024, the Constitution, yeah, the Constitution, I can't hear the next. You said the Constitution is what?
Is it overthrown in 2024?
Is it?
Did you hear that?
Can you use another easier word? Is it
Is
changed?
I think Natalie's asking, is the Constitution destroyed then in 2024? So it seems like you're
destroyed.
saying,
Okay, yeah.
overthrown.
In 2020.
Yeah.
Okay, my answer is in 2024, the Constitution was not destroyed.
So
it was not destroyed in 2024, but this entity that wants to take the nation back to the period that is pre-1798 has to do it constitutionally.
right, so now it's got in constitutionally and it's trying to change the constitution, or at least what I guess the question is, what are we marking as it's speaking as a dragon? And I think and the next follow-on question is, okay, we're saying that's happening in 2024, but maybe it could even happen worse in 2028 and escalate further because it's not completely destroyed the constitution yet. I think that's where Natalie's coming from.
Okay, that's what Natalie's coming from. Okay, all right. And now I understand. So going back to Brian, did I at least try to answer your question?
Yes.
Or we need further clarity?
No, that'll do fine. Thank you. Just to add to what Natalie is saying, that in fact, for me, democracy was used as a sword against democracy. And in this case, democracy lost, because from here on going forward, yes, we do expect all the pillars of democracy, as we have seen, are being thrown down. And so that constitution definitely will not stand for much longer if this continues.
Yes, even though I'm not too sure if they are going to do away with the constitution completely. I I I have seen in Africa, I've seen nations that have always been dictatorships, and yet they have the constitution. They will continue to tell you that we are following the constitution. We are following the constitution when they are not following the constitution. For example, there is already talk on the news that Donald Trump wants to run again in 2028. We know the constitution does not allow him to do that. So if he's going to run in 2028, he's gone against the constitution, but they won't tell you that some people will say he's going against the constitution, but the institution will say, no, we are upholding our constitution. And you see now. So yeah. Titus, I see your hand.
Ignatius, Charity had a
Yes.
question on the chat.
Okay, let me open the chat. Question. Was 1888 a Sunday law or an agitation of the Sunday law? Sorry, I joined late. Okay. All right. So 1888, the Sunday law did not happen. When I put 1888 there, I was marking it as a point in history where we place the Sunday law using the Great Controversy to say it almost happened in 1888. But of course, when Ellen White was writing, she was agitating. She was saying this is going to happen, but it did not happen. So the emphasis, since you joined late, the emphasis when I made that point, the emphasis is that if it had happened, it had to go through a voting. People had to vote that in Congress. And indeed, it failed to happen. I hope I've answered. So if there are no questions, Titus, you had your hand up.
Yeah, happy
Okay.
Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath.
Yeah, my question is, I have a comment and a question, and my question is based on the fact that you wrote. I think you can.
Could you speak up, please? I can't hear clearly.
Okay, my question is based on the. I don't know if I'm audible.
Titus, we can't hear you very well. I don't know if you can speak closer to the mic or
Put in the chat.
or write it in the chat, perhaps.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if I'm audible now.
That's a bit better.
Okay, all right.
Am I?
So I think my time could be up or is up. I'm not too sure. We wait for Titus to write.
Yeah, I was going to
This
say
question.
it's 11:50, so you can finish at 12 if you want.
Okay.
Ignatius, you can finish at 12, okay, which is near enough.
Oh, okay. I finish at 12?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, that's fine. So any questions and contributions while we wait
Titus,
for...
go ahead, Titus. We could hear you just then, Titus, if you want to speak again. Just speak slowly and close to the mic.
I think I can write like I can write it on the forum because I think it's a problem with my device.
Connection. Okay.
We can hear you
Okay.
I can hear
clearly.
you now, though.
Okay, if you can get me, then I can ask. So my question was based on the structure you wrote. I think you can slide the yeah. So you wrote Revelation 13 verses 12 to 18 is concerning the Sunday law period. And so my question was based on Revelation 13 verses 14. And in Revelation 13 verses 14, it talks about an entity appealing to the people who dwell upon the heart that they should create an image of the beast. And I've gone to most of our pioneers commenting on that. They will say Revelation 13 verses 14 is a definitive proof that this that the beast in Revelation 13 verse 11 is United States, because the people who dwell in the people are the ones who have power, and it's the people who will make the image of the beast, or the who will make the image of the beast. And most of our pioneers, Lagboro, Jane Andrews, Uriah Smith, and I think even Ellen White, will see that as a definitive proof that it has to do with United States, and it is connected with election because it's representative, like it's the people who dwell on the heart that make the image of the beast. So in all of the articles, you will have an hint that it has to do with representation, with elections, with the people being the ones who will create this thing, the image of the beast. And so my question was, why then didn't they focus on in most of the articles? They will, even if they comment, they will just give a small comment that it's, for example, Jane Lagboro will in one of the statements will say this is a proof that the people or their representatives will create the image of the beast. So you'll just find this small, they will make a small comment and then they will slide into the Sunday law. So my question will be, why do they do that? And why did they do that? Because it's clear, even with them, that they knew there's something to do with election, but why didn't they focus on election? Yeah.
Okay. Well, the way I see it is that if it was going to happen in 1888, I would say that still it's still some voting that was going to take place, is it? Is the people that were going to do that. People were going to vote. It was going to pass through Congress. So it's still the people. And I think the bias towards the Sunday law in particular, we do it. I think we do it as Seventh-day Adventists. We have not been very careful in trying to really scrutinize what is actually happening. And it is in our dispensation, because we see an election hugely pronounced in our interpretation of history, the history that is happening. We then begin to see that, oh, there is an election, you see. So yeah, that's my take with regards. I think we are living in two different dispensations, and in their dispensation, their main emphasis was, okay, yes, it's gonna pass through Congress, but this Sunday issue that's coming up is the image of the beast. I don't know if I answered it correctly, or anybody wants to add in.
Ignatius,
Yes, Emma.
can you hear me? It's Natalie. Can you or anybody tell me when the dragon spoke in verse 6:15? Where would we mark that, and what was it?
Sorry?
When did the dragon speak? This in verse 6.
Okay, the question is, when does the dragon speak?
Image of the beast. Oh, sorry?
I believe the dragon begins to speak at the Sunday law. When we get to this way mark, I believe when we get to this way mark here.
Yeah, doing what? Saying what?
Sorry?
Doing what? Saying what?
It will speak saying what? It will be the speaking of the dragon is when this nation will begin to go against the principles of equality. It begins, the people agree through a vote that let's go against the principles of equality. And when they voted Donald Trump in 2024, is the people that are agreeing using the provision that is there within the Constitution to say everyone is brought to power through a vote.
Didn't they do that in 2016 when they voted in Trump?
Sorry, anybody who is next to Natalie.
Didn't they do that in 2016 when they voted in Trump?
Oh,
you know what
okay,
Trump
okay,
did?
okay.
Did they go against equality then?
All right. So when they voted Trump in 2016, it was part of the process.
Why not mark it there? Why mark it 2024?
Okay. Anybody wants to help me there?
Is it to
Why are we
do, to do with the woman and the ideology? But I think, and then having the beast, the seat, is it all to do with that? Do you think? But then, is that how it speaks when they join forces in 2024, the beast and the woman?
Yeah. Of course, we have a model that we use, but that will be going to other verses to explain that particular part, because we use the model of the Diadochi Wars, and we talk about the Battle of Ipsas before Raphia and Paniam. So that's a model that we use to explain that, but we should be able to explain it here using the model that we have put down here in Revelation chapter 13. So I think it's a very important question for me. So anybody wants to help me answer that? So no one wants to respond to why we say that, why we are saying that the people chose Donald Trump in 2016, but we do not see 2016 to be the Sunday law. Yet 2024, we see that as the Sunday law without going to other passages, using Revelation chapter 13 only and the arguments that I have put across. Somebody said, Titus said 2016 was not complete fulfillment. It has to be complete.
I suppose that is the question, isn't it? What does complete look like? So
yes,
is the speaking of the image of the beast the same as the speaking of the dragon? That's the first question, I guess. And then it's when this image speaks, it's going to do something to force people. It says in the text. So what do we, if we say it starts speaking, are we going to say the vote was a force? I don't know. It's just, I guess, what's speaking of the dragon? What is that exactly? How do we define it to know that it's here? Because we talk loosely about principles of equality, but as Natalie said, you could see that he was not pro-equality in 2016. So what has he actually done that's different from the last time?
And I think if I can try, that is still related to the question I asked, which is that I think election had to be an issue in Millerite history, and it also has to be an issue in our history. And I guess because we are history of success, for me, what I see is election is the cause and the effect is trampling of human rights, which is equality in our time, and maybe in Ellen White's time, the Sunday legislation, which is trampling with liberty of conscience of people. So election has to be an issue because it is their cause. And at that point, when we have the image of the beast being set up, then that is when the people elect that image of the beast, then it begins there. I think the reason why 2016 might not be is because we know there is a break in 2021, something like that. And yeah.
Because the break there was a break with Biden 2021.
Okay, so from what Titus said, Titus is saying that the image of the beast was not set up in 2015, before 2016. But when we come to the 2024 election, the image of the beast is set up and the election gives the image of the beast power to speak. The image of the beast being an entity that is put its objectives, laid them bare to say, this is what we want to achieve, this is what we are going to do. And we know that to be going against the principles of the Declaration of Independence. Yes, Curtis, I see your hand.
I was reticent to say anything because, whatever, for whatever reason, but something came to mind as the question came up about what was different between Trump's first term and Trump's second term. And I think often when we read Revelation 13, we can get confused about what the story is about. And it's easy to make that story about individual people, like actions that the government does to people to force people to get the mark of the beast, or etc., etc. But when we look at Daniel 3, at least, you can see that the way Nebuchadnezzar goes about his actions is against institutions. That's the focus, because Nebuchadnezzar wants to reshape the government. And so if you go to Trump's first term and Trump's second term, at least in my eyes, just looking at the media, there's a clear difference in how what Trump's been able to do with regards to the institutions around him, where he's gutted the government now, which he just wasn't able to do the first time. And if we keep looking for laws as the marker for speaking as a dragon, for instance, against individual people, I think my perspective is it's a distraction, as opposed to trying to understand how a kingdom is operating and running functionally, and how that kingdom has been reshaped in a specific image, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
That's just my perspective.
Can I just say, so what you're saying is that it's, when you look at it as an institutionally, what happened in 2024 is completely different than 2016, which I agree. But, and you talked about speaking as a dragon in the institution. So 2024, it spoke as a dragon. And you're saying that because of the way it's dealt with institution.
I'm talking about the Sunday law period. So Ellen White's going to mark the Sunday law waymark as the speaking of the dragon. But just from the studies that we've learned about the flood and the papacy, all that time period is a specific ideology being manifested. And so if we want to see the speaking of a dragon, it's that Sunday law period and what that kingdom is doing.
Okay, so we'd say speaking would be the loud cry, do you think, Daniel?
It's covers that whole period instead of one point, from my perspective.
Sorry.
The loud cry
Okay.
itself isn't just one point. It starts from the marker of the Sunday law and it just gets louder and louder. It's not one thing that happens.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
I think that was my issue. We were trying to plug it in 2024, but it's a process, a period. It's just like you said, it gets louder and louder. So I think when we're just fixated on one point, we find it hard to see everything in that one point when it's actually a process.
All right. Let me give Ross an opportunity to speak before I sum up.
Okay, mine is just a quick addition that mainly I just wanted to address the fact that I think you were also tying yourself down by saying from Revelation 13, you wanted your answers only from Revelation 13, and it becomes binding that you now need to start formulating things that are not in Revelation 13, and you can't sustain them. But also, if we just look at our methodology, we don't formulate doctrine on one particular chapter of scripture. We also look to other places. And then it will not limit you to just see one process, but you'll be able to see the bigger picture where you see it's actually not a point, but just it's a period. It's the Sunday law is actually not just one step. It's something that swells, like Curtis was saying. It gets louder and louder. So limiting ourselves only to the points you put on the board and in Revelation 13, then you won't be able to see other perspectives, that or other narratives that add on to this a broad subject. That's all I wanted to say. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what I've been doing is that I've gone back to where we find the terminology Sunday law. I've not really I'm sorry if it came out that way, that I've limited my study or anybody else not to talk about anything else that's found in Revelation chapter 13. But the objective was to go back to where we find the terminology Sunday law, right here on the first line that I put there, to say the terminology Sunday law, which is found in Great Controversy, many passages. One that come to mind is page 508 or 503, paragraph 1. Ellen White is taking it from Revelation chapter 13. She's explaining what happens in Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. So the objective was to show that before that Sunday law issue actually happened, to say we have a law that has been passed, it has to go through voting. And why it goes through voting? It goes through voting because when the nation rose to power in 1798, it was a collective body of people deciding how the nation was going to be governed. So I was zeroing down particularly on the Sunday law waymark without looking at the intricacies to say how exactly is going to be etc a period point etc, but to say that using Revelation chapter 13 itself, you can, if you want, be able to see that before a law comes in America, it has to go through a process which is constitutional, because this America we are talking about, this country, this nation, rose constitutionally through a document that they respect so much. So it has to go through that particular process, which is voting. And Titus is added to say that it's the people that give power, which is in verse 14, which I had not seen, and I want to go and look into it again, which says that it's the people that have the power in this particular instance, or in this particular nation is the people, unlike in the past, where it's just a family or an army or a person leading that army. But in this particular case, it has to be the people. There has to be voting involved. Now, when you come to answering questions to do with which voting, 2016 or 2014, when it comes to that, we might then see the need of visiting our previous understanding on certain issues and also what other passages of scripture say relating to the same subject. Curtis, is your hand still up? Because I now want to close. You forgetting to put it down? Okay, thank you. So I will end here, and I hope that this particular study will trigger us to go and find more and more depth with regards to the subject of the Sunday law being associated with the rise and fall of nations. We know that number two argument that we put with regards to the Sunday law being 2024 is the issue of that name, Fabian Maximus Gergis, FMG, and I'll tell you that all those people that are very close to me, I struggled a lot with this particular one. And I sent a message to Curtis on the last weeks before the camp. I didn't say the question out, but it was to do with this particular subject and the being. It was so difficult for me to internalize, but through the camp, I managed to get a breakthrough. So this, again, the reason why I brought it up is it zeroes down on the issue of voting again. And this presentation was trying to show that even Revelation chapter 13, if you want, you are able to see it as well. So I'll now hand back platform to Debbie. Or am I supposed to pray first?
Yeah, you want to pray, yeah.
Okay, all right. So I'll pray. Let's bow our heads. Prayer, closing prayer. Let's pray. Dear God, we thank you for the privilege of study and the privilege of fellowship and the privilege to be part of this movement, particularly being part of the people that are willing to learn and to unlearn things, and people that have intelligently made a decision that whatever truth you're going to show us, we are going to accept it, and we are going to live according to that particular truth. We thank you, dear Lord, for it is such a privilege to be able to know the things that so many people wish to know and understand, and yet they've not had the opportunity to do so. It is my humble prayer that as we continue to study and as we continue to grow in the light that you are lighting upon us, may our characters also be molded according to the similitude of Christ. This is my humble prayer. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.